The US government may face a possible shutdown after 5 House Republicans failed to come together on a defence spending bill. Joining us live is Professor Gordon Flake, the CEO of the Perth USAsia Centre. Gordon, good to see you as always. The prospect of a government shutdown seems to pop up a bit more regularly in the US than it does here in Australia. So tell us, how have US politicians got to this point, and what would a government shutdown actually mean in practical terms?
The U.S. system has built into it a deep skepticism of the power of the majority, or what they would call the tyranny of the majority. And so individuals are giving a lot of power to kind of gum up the works. Traditionally, that's much more true in the Senate. You've also been following the story now for months where an individual senator, Senator Tuberville, has been able to hold up all the appointments of the U.S. military. Ironically, the Senate, where that's much more prevalent, was able to find a workaround, at least for one person, the new chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Traditionally, the House has a much more a focus on the rule of the majority party. So if you're the Speaker of the House of Representatives, you generally get your way. What we have in the House today is not actually a contest between Democrats and Republicans, but a contest between different wings of the Republican Party. So we have a historically weak Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, Speaker McCarthy, and a group of 10 to 15 kind of MAGA, Make America Great Again Republicans who are determined to undermine him. And so the issue here, again, isn't a failure of agreement between Democrats and Republicans. It's the fact that the Republican rebels, if you will, have blocked the passage of individual spending bills with each step, whether it's agriculture or defense, things that would normally sail through, putting more and more pressure upon the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and they're doing so specifically to weaken him. Really, it's the Republicans not doing the Republicans' responsibility, because they are the ones who control the House. The danger is, of course, that it'll be the American people that pay the price as you have the economic disruption that comes along with a shutdown of the House and a failure to pass budgets for next year.
So is it likely there'd be an 11th hour deal, that they'll walk back from the ledge on this, or is it going to happen, do you think?
It's hard to tell just because of the personalities involved. Clearly, a majority of House Republicans don't want this to happen. A majority of House Republicans, would like to move things forward. But again, the system is geared towards a smaller group in that front. There is also the potential of some type of a deal with Democrats to get things across. We kind of working your way around those MAGA Republicans. We saw that just today in the Senate. So it's not clear. What is clear is that with every passing day, the risk grows higher. And as a result, the stakes grow higher. And so I think you're going to see this being an area of great attention in the next couple of weeks, just because, again, the U.S. government shutting down is something that is greatly damaging to the U.S. economy and thus the global economy.
But when we look at defence spending, Ukraine is a big one for the US at the moment. Are we seeing increasing pushback from US Republicans in particular over their support for Ukraine? Do you think Volodymyr Zelensky should be worried about the prospect of the Republicans winning the next US election? Could we see a real policy shift on that front if that's the outcome?
I don't think so. I think 5 or 6 months ago, you saw much stronger voices of skepticism. I think there's a pretty strong consensus among, at least the current Republican leadership in both the House and the Senate in support of Ukraine, and that's bipartisan both sides. So I'm not seeing a recent spike. Obviously, it all depends on how the war continues to go. The longer the situation on the ground appears to be a stalemate, the more difficult that support is to sustain. And that obviously has to be on President Zelensky's mind. It's probably part of President Putin's plan in Russia. In fact, if anything, the only thing that probably could save President Putin right now would be the successful re-election of Donald Trump. And that could change things. But again, we're quite a ways away from that. It's unclear as of yet.
I just interviewed the Green Senator David Shoebridge. He's over in Washington for that cross-party Australian delegation that's really pushing the case for Julian Assange not to end up being extradited to the United States. I know that you and I have discussed this in the past, Gordon, and you haven't sounded very convinced that there is a strong political will among the major parties in the United States to reverse the position on his future. Do you expect this cross-party delegation will have much of an impact?
Well, before we talk about political will in the United States to reverse it, we have to talk about political will in Australia to ask for it. And so while there is a delegation there right now, this has not been the official position of our current government or our previous government. So neither the leaders of the coalition here in Australia, or the current opposition, or the Labor Party have made this a priority issue or a request of the United States. And so right now, the delegation is being met with some sympathetic voices, Senator Rand and some other congressmen who are interested. But to be honest, the numbers are small. I don't consider, in the list of 10 priority issues facing Washington, D.C. today, I don't think it'd break the top 10, maybe not even the top 100. So as of yet, until this becomes a priority for Australia, I don't know that it becomes a real priority for the United States.
Okay, just finally, I wanted to get your thoughts on the former Prime Minister Scott Morrison's plans to head to Taiwan. It comes ahead of what we are expecting to be a visit by our Prime Minister Anthony Albanese to Beijing a bit later in the year. Is that a smart move for Mr Morrison to head there?
Well, I think the former Prime Minister was very clear on his concern about Chinese action and his broader support for the legitimate aspirations of the people of Taiwan. The People's Republic of China has always been particularly sensitive about sitting U.S. or Australian and Japanese, other international officials visiting Taiwan. Former prime ministers are giving a lot more leeway. Former Prime Minister Tony Abbott visited Taiwan before, so I'm not overly concerned about the potential of having a former prime minister upset kind of ongoing diplomatic efforts of the current government. But it does highlight the fundamental challenge that our current government, our Prime Minister Albanese, will have if he does indeed get to Beijing before the end of the year, because there are ongoing concerns about Taiwan, about Hong Kong, about the Uyghurs, about Chinese economic coercion, which is unresolved, and our desire to kind of celebrate the 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations with the People's Republic of China. So not an easy task for either side, but I'm not overly concerned about a former prime minister's visit to Taiwan. That's pretty much par for the course.